Hello everyone and welcome to a Tropical Tracks for Thursday, September 20th. I've only been doing this for a week and a half, and unfortunately we're going to have to take a serious tone today because of what we're watching down in the Caribbean. So let's get right to it, no delay. I don't want to bury the lead in any way, but I think South Florida needs to start thinking about hurricane preparations, and I will go through all of that as we discuss what is going on and what we should be doing now. First off, let's get an overview of what is going on there in the Caribbean. This is the tropical disturbance that we have been watching now over the past several days, coming out of the Western Atlantic and moving into the Southeast Caribbean. It's been very far south in latitude, just to the north now of the Venezuelan coast. But what I always want to talk about right off the bat is who is potentially threatened and who is not. And you'll see right away there are a lot of areas there already in the orange, which means moderate threat potential. Now, South Florida, I think it's just too early to kind of put us in a threat area yet. That being said, we're close enough to it that I think, and because it takes a while to prepare, we need to start thinking about preparations. And once again, I'll go over that in just a second. When I say tropical threats and preparation, what I mean here is you will have to physically do something to prepare your home or workplace or whatever to get ready for a storm. And it's more than just some rainfall and flooding. It's more than just some gusty winds. It's the requirement of really making some big efforts here. And that threat is increasing now a little bit over Jamaica. It may still be a weak system as it passes Jamaica, but it's increasing to moderate over the Cayman Islands as well as the southwest coast and Pinar del Rio provinces of western Cuba there, as well as the Caribbean side of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico and as the Yucatan Channel there as well. You can see once again South Florida, we're at none right now. I was tempted to put it at low, but I think we've got one more day to dial in the models. That doesn't mean we really have one more day to just watch, wait, and see. So let's talk about a bigger picture here. Looking good just about everywhere else. That's really the only game in town. There is a rip current risk threat across the eastern seaboard thanks to the waves coming from Fiona. So this is good close up this afternoon, and you can clearly see now we have a well-defined circulation there, a swirl in the clouds right there, and that swirl has been kind of making a northwest motion here. Now originally it looked like this swirl was going to kind of hug the coast here, maybe go very close to the ABC Islands, Abaco, Bonaire, and Curacao, but it looks like it's made a little bit of latitude. Is this going to be our primary focus right there? It's possible. It's possible this is just one little feature that's coming out here, and that maybe we've got a larger swirl kind of embedded in there that we're tracking here. But needless to say, we've got something now that's identifiable and something that we're going to be able to kind of track here going forward. And once we have a trackable feature, then the models start doing better. Hurricane hunters can go in, they can investigate the system as well and track that trackable feature. Now this is a broader satellite view here. The last frame, unfortunately, is a little bit unavailable there. I don't know if it's a satellite problem or a data problem, but you can see Fiona moving to the north there, just to the east of Florida, and you can see the outflow there that has been flowing down and blowing over this disturbance. Now the outflow, it's wind shear, and that wind shear is usually a disruptive or a limiting factor. And so that's been going on. That's probably going to continue for another day or two. So in the near term, we wouldn't expect rapid development or something like that. But eventually, and I'm going to get off of that because that little flash there at the end is kind of annoying. Eventually, we're going to get into a situation where the wind shear is going to drop and the conditions are going to become markedly more favorable for development. And depending on what type of structure we have going into the Western Caribbean there, will kind of influence how quickly this thing deepens, gets stronger, and intensifies. So here's the latest model data. Actually, this is not the latest model data. Maybe I can update it here because this is what we call the 12Z. So this was based on 8 a.m. this morning. Let me see if there is an 18Z here. And if we have the 18Z, oh, we have it. There we go. So this is a little more up to date on some of these models here. And the models that have an I after them, so you'll see there is a CMCI right there, NGXI, so that's the Navy model there, that's the Canadian model there. There's a HMNI over there, that's the HMON model, and then there's the AEMI. All these I's mean that the model was run at 8 a.m. this morning. So their starting positions and their forecast positions have been interpolated to where the system that we're tracking, the feature that we're tracking is right now. So basically this is kind of like saying it's up to date. It's the model from this morning, but it's up to date. There's the initial position there. Now, a couple of things you'll note here. The big ones that we look at, the big ones that we pay attention to are what we call the consensus models. The consensus models are kind of a blend of all the models. The consensus model in the 5-day time frame there, not the ensemble models, but the consensus model like this TVCA, and there's a TVCE in there too. Those tend to do pretty well when we're talking the 5-day time frame here. So what we're looking at here are these models, and that AEMI, that is the ensemble mean from the GFS. And we've been talking about how the ensemble mean has kind of shifted a little bit to the west there. It has begun to shift back to the right as of this morning. And then the AVNI, that's the GFS model. So that's the run from the GFS model. So we talk about two different models here. We talk about an ensemble model and a deterministic model. And when we say deterministic, it means it's just one solution. That's what the model thinks is going to happen. The ensembles give us a bunch of solutions and possibilities. But one of the things that we know is that far away, the ensemble is kind of good to look at because it gives us all those possibilities. As something becomes a trackable feature and it gets closer, like say within 5 days, then we also start looking at the individual members there. And you can see they're all basically to the northwest. Now we're going to kind of use Jamaica as a reference here because any of the models here that go fairly close to Jamaica also seem to have a little more of a turn. And this time frame in here, so here's the 24 hours, so that is Friday afternoon, there is Saturday afternoon in the 72-hour position, that's Sunday afternoon. We're going to kind of want to check in, I could say to everybody, well, if it gets west of 80 and it's north of 18, which is that point right there, we should be concerned. But nobody's going to remember that. So we're kind of looking at Jamaica as kind of our point in the middle of the Caribbean there as a reference. Is it closer to Jamaica on Sunday? It's easy to check. You'll just be able to look at a satellite map or something like that. That would raise our concern here in South Florida. Is it farther? Has it taken one of these far, far south tracks here, over here? We'd still pay attention, but we wouldn't think the concern is as immediate. So that's kind of something we're going to be watching Sunday. Remember, these are all different things we're paying attention to here. We're not focused on any one thing. We're considering lots of different things. It's kind of hard. The human brain wants to know, is it coming here, number one, and number two, how bad is it going to be? We don't have those answers. That is not an answer a question that we can answer that easily. So let's talk a little bit about the trends here. And one of the trends that we've got here, this is the consensus model. I said it does pretty well. And so the very lightmost tracks here, that is the oldest run of this model. So that was, I think it's about 30 hours ago. But anyway, it was originally over here. And then the model kind of shifted, or there it is down there. And then the model shifted a little bit to the right and then a little to the left. And then it looks like the last three runs kind of dialed in there with a bit of a curve there as we get to the 7-day time frame. You can see there's not a lot of shifting going on from 24 hours through about 72 hours, and then the shifting kind of starts to open up, at least on this model run, because not only are we looking at different models, but we're also comparing how has that model changed over time. Is it flopping back and forth? Is it kind of dialed in? So once again, this is a consensus model, a blend model here. It's a bunch of models together. How has the GFS done? Let's look at the what we call the deterministic GFS. So it originally was kind of going up here. The first run there a couple days ago was going up there, and then we all saw that a lot of model runs went over here every 6 hours, and it looked like a Gulf system for sure, and it looked like the Yucatan Peninsula would be involved. But now on this latest run, it has started to swing back again to the west, and that's that. Some people say, oh, it's a trend, it's a trend. I always think of a trend as like 3 or more models that have gone in one direction, and they've either stayed that way or they continue to go in that direction. So now that it's come back, is it a trend? Not yet. It's just something that we're going to be watching here. We don't, unfortunately, have a lot of the European data because the European, very interesting when it came out. Let me see if I can get that. So that's the ensemble. Let me see if I've got the European deterministic. So we don't have many model runs there, but you see there's been a shift of the European to the right. So let's talk a little bit more now about, that was our spread there. Here is our intensity forecast. And as I said, there's pretty good shear here for the next at least couple of days. And so all the intensity members here are kind of pretty low. A few maybe take it up to tropical storm strength, but there's not a lot of aggressive intensity development there. And in fact, you know what? This also is from 12Z, so we do have a later run. Let me see if I can get that up, and we can see an 18Z. So that would be the 2 o'clock run here. Hopefully, I won't blow up our presentation here. So there is the 18Z guidance there. Yep. So, and once again, you can see that the models, they're slow to intensify here through the next 2 days. So we don't expect this thing to suddenly spin up and intensify. That's the forecast. We don't expect it to get strong quick. So for people who might be watching and saying, well, it's been 2 days, it hasn't really done much. That's what we're expecting. We're not expecting it to do much for the next 2 days. But after that, then we start seeing intensification by 72 hours. Remember, it's Thursday afternoon now. So Friday afternoon is 24 hours. Saturday afternoon is 48 hours. Sunday afternoon is 72 hours. So by the time it's closest to Jamaica, making its closest approach, that's when the conditions become more favorable. 1, the shear goes down. 2, the relative humidity goes up. And 3, the water temperatures start to increase, and the depth of the water also becomes very warm and deep. That's what we talk about as ocean heat content. That is a big player, especially if a storm is not moving too fast, because sometimes a slow-moving storm will do what we call upwelling, where the water, cooler water deeper comes up at the surface. But if the water is deep warm, then even that water comes up. It doesn't cause a lot of cooling. So once we get past the 3-day time frame there's a lot of intensification. Of course, we know that the H-wharf, when it doesn't have a well-defined system like a tropical depression or a tropical storm, it intensifies too quickly. So we're going to kind of just, we'll say we saw it, but we're not going to get overly excited about that intensification there. This icon here, this is an intensity consensus. It's kind of a blend of the models. It's being biased by the H-wharf, so it's a little on the high side here. And this LGIM, that's a pretty good model. That's a bit of a statistical model. And then we've got like the Canadian down here and the avian. Sometimes what we call these deterministic models, the GFS and the European, their intensity values aren't as good as some of our hurricane models like the H-wharf and the H-mon. By the way, the H-mon did very well last year in terms of intensity forecast, so that's something we're going to, in our minds, give a little more weight to. But once again, all these things are considerations here as we go forward. So now let's talk about what's going on here going forward, because the GFS ensemble, and this was several days ago, looked like that. And this is when it looked like everything was kind of going to the left. And then the next run, well, that's actually the European run there. So this is the latest European run. Let me make sure my references here are right. Okay, so this is this morning's GFS ensemble. And you can see from it, it is still very far to the left. The mean, which did pretty good last year, is way over here to the left. But it has started going back to the right. Is that going to continue? We don't know, and I'll show you what I think is influencing all of this. Of course, storm intensity influences this. Is it deep into the atmosphere? Is it shallow? Shallow systems tend to run more quickly to the west without going as much north. And these colors here, so here are our intensities down here. So these colors here all indicate either strong tropical storm or hurricane of those members there. So let's move along here and talk about the European, because I think this, for those of you who surfed the internet, this got your attention. This was the, oh boy, moment. So the European shifted very far to the right today. And it's interesting because the difference between the European and the GFS now is about 400 or more miles. That's a big difference at 5 days between two fairly reliable models. A lot of times it's the mean, what's in the middle, that wins out. But when you see one model go really hard to the right, you have to say, well, we're going to have to watch that and see if that that trend sticks around. But this is the 5-day position here on the European now. And basically here is our spread here. So you'll notice there's not a lot of what we would call a long track spread. That's usually a timing issue. This is mostly cross track spread. That means where's it going to go kind of issue there. So the mean is right there going through Cuba. And so this is the 5-day period here. And this generally puts a tropical storm or a hurricane somewhere near South Florida in 5 days. What's the 5-day time? It's Tuesday. Let's talk about what it looks like is going on here, because I think it's going on in the upper atmosphere. And this was the GFS several days ago, and you can see there it had the system on Tuesday morning down there in the Western Caribbean. The system, when I say the system, we're talking about that right there. So that was our system, and that was the forecast a couple days ago of where it was expected to be Tuesday morning. And then, and we're talking once again the GFS here, and then the next computer run showed it going over there to the left. So it looked like a trend where the attention was being more focused in the Gulf and less into South Florida. And then there was another run. This was from last night, and you can see it there near the Yucatan Peninsula. And then here was this morning's run, and you can see it there now shifted to the right in the Yucatan Channel. So that is the European. And so what I think we're looking at here, because we're looking at the upper air kind of steering pattern here, I think what the thing that's affecting the model is this right here, this big trough that comes in behind Fiona, and how far does that trough extend south? Because what that trough is doing as it's coming in is it's eroding the blocking ridge that has been sitting there. And when I say eroding, I mean it's making a pathway for this system to go north. Could this trough dig even further down here and potentially turn it? It's a possibility, but it's also a possibility that the trough doesn't go any further and digs just enough that the GFS solution here is kind of towards the Gulf there, or maybe kind of a curve up there. Lots of uncertainty once we get beyond 5 days. So here is the European solution, and we'll go back a few days here on its upper air pattern. So that was a couple days ago, or that was yesterday morning, and you can see it was there near western Cuba. And then this was last night's run, and you can see still near western Cuba. And then there is this morning's run, and that's for Tuesday morning. And this is why a lot of people kind of sat up who follow this on the internet. So on the European, the trough is a bit deeper there. And that deepness has allowed a weakness to develop, a break in the block, an opportunity to go north and northeast there. And so this is something now that we're going to really have to consider. Is this going to work out this way? You know, I don't know. It's too early to tell. So that's certainly something we're going to be watching as we go forward here. Now, at this point, I'd like to do the deeper dive thing and remind everybody, if you like what you've seen so far, like, subscribe, get the notifications. I'm supposed to do it at the top of the video so that you can be up to date, because if this starts getting more serious, we'll be doing these live updates every 6 hours and asking questions, answering questions as well. So let's talk about the deeper dive here and talk about what we should be doing now. All right, so we are 5 days away now, according to the European. And let me just emphasize also here, once advisories are started and once the Hurricane Center has a cone, we will use that as our reference, because they are still the most skilled. The models are catching up, but the Hurricane Center still has the most skill. So once we get a cone, we will base our timeline on that. But in the meantime, because we don't have a cone, because we don't have forecast advisories, we're kind of using basically where is it based on the closest models there. So that's something that we're going to be watching. So here's our timeline here now, and we're kind of in this 5-day time frame, okay? So that is where we start thinking about the possibility of a hurricane event. I know some people are already thinking about it, some people are already preparing and things like that. And if you're new to South Florida, if you're new here since 2019, the Dorian threat, or especially 2017, South Florida has kind of a funny way, and maybe this happens everywhere, of responding in waves to a tropical storm or a hurricane threat. There are the people that go out early and get it done because They don't want to deal with the crowds. Good for you. And let me say this other thing here too. In our preparations, as we stack up our preparations, as they kind of ramp up here, we can always stop. We can always say we've done this level of preparation. Now, guess what? We're going to pause because the storm is now looking like it's not coming here. It's never a bad thing to take a pause or to take a hold while we're waiting to see exactly where the storm's going, but you don't want to be behind the curve, and I can't stress that enough. The people that wait and start seeing the first wave come out, which is where there's a little bit of pressure on the grocery stores and there's a little more traffic at the gas station, that encourages other people to come out. And that's the first wave. And those are the people that are a little bit behind the curve because now they're having to wait in lines. And then there's a lull because if it gets bad enough, there's a situation where the gas stations are running low on gas, the grocery stores are kind of running low, and it just takes time for them to catch up to that first wave. So if you don't want to wait for the first wave, then sometimes get ahead of the second wave. The second wave is the people that have waited until close to when it's almost too late and they said, it's coming here, I'm going to go out and get prepared. Now, Irma was a clear-cut situation, so we had lots of advance notice with Irma. This is going to be a little bit tighter here, but we're in the 5-day time frame, so we need to wrap our minds around thinking about the possibility of a hurricane event here in South Florida. For farther up in the farther up on the peninsula, Tampa Bay area, it's probably day 6 here, 6 days away. So for us, it's 5 days away, and so that's what we're doing here. And then as we go forward now tomorrow, if we're 4 days away, then what we're going to be doing tomorrow is topping off our hurricane kit and supplies. And I'll be talking more about that in just a second. At 3 days away, personal preparations, gas, medications, stuff like that. Cash medications and stuff like that. At 2 days away, and this is where the watches are issued, this is when we really take care of our home and boat preparations. These are the things we get done outside, the things that take some time. And then when warnings are issued, that's at 36 hours out, we finish our outdoor preparations. The weather could get bad sooner, so we need to be mindful of that when we're in this 24 to 36 hour time frame out. And then when we get into the 24-hour preparation, that's our indoor preparations. When I say indoor, I mean I will, by day 3, have turned down my freezer to the lowest setting. I'm going to show you more about that tomorrow. But this is the point where I set flashlights out, set them out so I know where to find them if the power goes out. At 12 hours away, of course, we're sheltering in place. And at 6 hours away, if it's there, that's when we know maybe how bad it's going to be. Why is it important to have a plan? Because without a plan, most people get in their cars and they leave. Now, there are some parts of South Florida where you will have to get in your car if you're in an evacuation zone, but most of us can ride a storm out here in South Florida. So let's talk about specifically about what we should be doing, what we will be doing here on our threat timeline. And let me start my second part of the presentation here because basically we've got the clock has started now. And there's my effects for the clock has started. We are 5 days out now, and 5 days out means we need to start thinking about our preparation. So we're going to set our prep timeline to 5 days out. So what does that mean? What do we do at 5 days out? And we're going to be doing this every day now. What should we be doing now? Because it's stressful watching models when they start coming your way. Maybe they'll shift away again, but it's easier to think about what should we be doing now. So first off, we want to make sure we have a hurricane plan. What is our hurricane plan? And this is the most important part of a hurricane plan. Do we live in an evacuation zone? In South Florida, and I think in most of the state, we evacuate for water, but we shelter in place, we hunker down for wind unless we're in a mobile home or unless we have special needs, something like that. So first thing you do is you determine if you're in an evacuation plan. And on the page here, on the links, I've got the Miami-Dade and the Broward hurricane guides where you can find all of that. Do we have special needs? If we have special needs, people in our house that may need extra care, then that's something that we're also going to consider as part of our hurricane plan. If we're without power for several days, and we have an oxygen machine, do we need to get extra oxygen? Things like that. Those are all the things that we're thinking about. Do we have a communications plan? A communications plan means I'm going to be staying in touch with friends and family here and I'm also going to stay in touch with friends and family out of town and tell them what they need to do if after a storm they don't hear from me for a while. I've got a communication plan with my brother who lives in Tampa. If he hasn't heard from me in 2 days after a storm, his instructions are to come down and check on me. So that's just the kind of plan that I have there. Do we have food, water, and medicine for 5 days? We used to have this saying, you know, a gallon per person per day for 3 days. I say 5 days. 5 gallons per person is a good thing to have. Now, do you need to buy lots of bottled water? I buy some bottled water because I freeze it and I use that cold to help keep food cool if the power goes out and things like that. Can you fill some jugs out of the faucet? Absolutely. I've done that. In fact, I'll do that this time. So what should we be doing now? Once again, we need to make sure we have a plan there as going forward with what we're going to be doing. So that's where we are today, 5 days on our clock here. If advisories are issued and the center is 6 days away, then we'll pause our plan. And we don't need to go any further. But that's basically the latest here. So I will be checking the comments, of course. I appreciate your the people talking in the chat here. And once again, I said this several days ago, it's too early to talk about specifics for South Florida, way too early. We know there's a Florida threat. We don't know if it's a Keys threat, a Miami-Dade threat, or a Broward threat. So we're talking in broad terms here. As we get closer, if it continues to kind of head this way in the models, then maybe we can start narrowing down. But right now I'm talking about everybody in South Florida in the 5-day timeline, and probably central parts of the peninsula in the 6-day timeline, and in the Panhandle potentially in the 7-day timeline based on what we're seeing now. So, you know, I'm on Twitter. I try to answer as many folks as I can. If I don't answer you, I apologize. At Craig Setzer, and then also I'll be checking the comments here after the video finishes if there's any questions you have for me. So, you know what? This is about helping everybody, and this is also about slow and steady, no panicking, slow preparations, and that's how we get it done. Once again, if you like the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and get notifications so that if I have to do any updates or anything like that, you will be sure to get them. And if nothing else changes, then of course we will talk tomorrow afternoon at 4:30, and we'll see you then.